What's up, and welcome back to the greatest teacher of all time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color, tied their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Make sure to go to greatestteacherofalltime.com and like and subscribe to the channel to support more great teachers like Mr. Jackson. What's up, Jabari?
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Dawson?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for being here. You have a really cool TikTok page where I found you doing a bunch of think pieces on education, and I want to kind of dive into those.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about it.
All right, all right. So first off, starting off, you are a seventh grade or seventh year high school math teacher, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. So with that, you see a lot of things in education. Your first video I actually want to talk about is this one where it talks about a middle school actually having their students lock up their phones all day in class, kind of like the style that you do when you go to like comedy show or something like that.
Middle and high school students now forced to lock away their phones before the bell rings.
Whew. We definitely got to talk about this one. No, I'll keep it a stack with y'all. Nah, the cell phone thing in school has gotten a little out of control. I promise you it has. But I will say this. We kind of saw this coming. I also will say this. This is a little extreme. Because, I mean, you got to lock their phones from the time they get into school to the time they get done. Like I said, that's a little bit much. Like, because, for example, if the students are keeping up with their phones, they got to keep up with this big old pop. And again, I'm not on either side. I'm just reporting what I see. But all I'm going to say is this. If y'all don't get it together, students, this going to be y'all. And you'll have nobody to blame but yourself.
So first off, what do you think of something like that?
All right. So first, I need to preface this whole conversation by saying I think how they're doing it is a little extreme, because they're at the end of the day they are kids. Now, I will say that the whole cell phone usage in schools has been it's been on an upward trend. Like a lot of students, they rather be on their phone than be engaged in the lesson and everything. I remember back in school, granted, cell phones were just coming out and everything, but we didn't really have access to our phones like that, or we would never do it while we were in class. We might have done it, when we were in the hallways, when we were at lunch or whatever. But nowadays, like I said, kids are literally scrolling on Instagram or in some group chat being messy with somebody else. So do I think that middle school or that school was extreme? Absolutely. But do I see why they're doing it? Again, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think it is a lot locking up the phones all day. Because of course, phones can be used for like emergencies and things like that. But I don't know. How do you tackle phones in your classroom or your school?
Truth be told, at our school and everything, we have a similar policy where we're supposed to collect the phones and everything. But I try to tell my kids like adults. Like I'm trying to tailor them to the real world, and I just
Wait,
tell them
wait,
like
stop.
this. I say,
So
"Hey,
hold on. The policy is to collect everybody's phones in what the beginning of class, beginning of the school day,
well,
or
the thing is like during our class periods and everything. So our kids are on periods and everything, and then well, let me back up a little bit. So, according to the county that I'm working in and everything, it states that the phone should be put away, powered off, and not seen from insert school hour start time to insert ending school time. However, our school, a lot of our kids, they don't have that self control. So our principal wanted us to go ahead and have them take their phones, put them in a bucket or put them in a cradle or have some creation to have the kids have their phones in, which again, that's what some teachers do. Personally, I tell the kids like this: you're an adult or you're going into adulthood. I'm going to tell you to put your phone away. Please don't use it while we're please don't use it while I'm teaching anything. Now, if you're using it when we're done listening to music, I'm cool with that. I personally don't have an issue with that. But if I'm over here giving direct instruction, I'm teaching you some formula or whatever, then hey, be engaged in what I'm talking about, because the second you look down at your phone, you're gonna miss something. So
yeah, that's interesting. And it's funny. So in the video you say taking the phones away is a lot, but you're not on either side. Um, I don't know. Guess when I was teaching, I guess I realized that phones would be a thing that students would be using. So I kind of put that on myself, where like I tried to make my class so good and fun and engaging and important that they wouldn't want to take out their phones. And if they did, I kind of put that on myself. How do you think about that?
I
Is that
got you.
a good way to tackle it or approach it? What do you think?
Absolutely, but at the same time, I feel like some classes are easier to make fun than others. Like, if you're in a social studies class, it's easy to get kids really, really immersed in social studies. Well, like, not in my case when I was in high school, but nowadays, people can be more immersed with it and do a lot of acting and stuff like that. Like, I got a lot of colleagues that do stuff like that. In math, it's a little, in my opinion, when the instruction is direct instruction, it's a little bit harder to make it, you know, engaging because it's a formula. And then kids already come into the mindset of I don't like math because of insert teacher here. And then COVID didn't make anything better because now kids know every cheat code there is out there. So you're fighting this battle along with some kids, they really just don't understand the content. So it doesn't matter how interesting you make it, they're not going to be engaged because this is something that they do not like.
Yeah, I definitely get that too. And it's funny you say that during the pandemic, they learned every single cheat code out there. But with new things like Chat GPT and all these apps where you just take a picture of the problem and it'll show you the steps to solve it. I don't know. Is there a way you can use that with your classes, or is that just completely out of the question?
No, I actually try to use it in my classroom. I actually tell my students if you use photo math or chat GBT or something like that to show you how to do a problem, I'm cool with it because I don't want you to necessarily do it the way that I do it. Because, like I tell them, I say, hey, how I teach you, you show a video or something else, they might teach it a different way. Another teacher might do it this way. Your old math teacher back in whatever grade may have done it in this way. So, again, as long as you can show me that you're understanding the work and understanding the content and I can follow along with you, I'm with it. Just don't sit up there and say, I did it and put a whole bunch of information that you know for a fact I didn't cover or you don't know what it is.
Okay, so yeah, that definitely takes a lot of trust in like the honor system as well, right?
Yeah, and some kids, they legitimately use it for that purpose because they'll tell me like, "Hey, Jackson, I did it this way because I saw this video." Okay, cool. As long as I can follow along with you and you can explain your steps to me, cool. But then when you start using all these fancy things or all these other nerdy math symbols and you can't tell me what it is, I'm like, okay, what is this? What does this mean? Well, I don't know. Then that's what it said on the thing. Well, then that's cheating. So then now we got a problem.
Yep,
So
yep. And it's funny how you have that way of knowing using those like different new map symbols. It's just like this teacher I
mhm.
talked to last year and using like Chat GBT to write an essay for you, right?
Yeah.
She said that you can actually tell, okay, I know my student writes like this. This new thing they turned in is not their work at all. But you do the same thing with those symbols, I guess.
Yeah, because like I say, if you give me a double barred R, in math, that means all real numbers. If that's not something that I covered, then that's not something you would know unless you went over it in the video. And then if you could explain it to me what it is, okay, I back up. Okay, you got it. You understand the content. I'm with it. Now, if I give you another problem and you can't tell me what to do, then that's why we have another problem. So it's all about how the kids utilize the technology, or at least in my opinion, is how they utilize the technology.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. And I don't know. I think a common theme between all the videos I'm going to pull up goes into like that trust and that different forms of classroom management. And I want to get into more of that. But first, let's hear from one of my sponsors, Teachers of Color Matter.
Friend, we need to talk. As a teacher of color with a social justice mindset, I know if I give big to my students, I also need to replenish big to myself. My Clap for Yourself 5-minute reflection journal is perfect. This journal was designed for teachers of color, so it takes my experiences in the classroom to heart. And friend, this journal has everything. It helps me address feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and self-doubt. I can either fill out a template on the right side or process a larger issue on the left. The templates bring more intention and success into my day, and I can use the adult coloring moments when I'm calling a parent or during a staff meeting. And Dr. Michelle has written letters to me throughout the book. It's almost as if she's reading my mind. The inspirational quotes remind me that I'm part of a legacy. Representation matters, and I do make an impact. What does your morning routine look like?
All right, welcome back. So Jabari, the next video I want to talk about is one where the caption says that a teacher says that 90% of the worry that the teachers do goes to student behavior and 5% actually goes to teaching.
Disruptive behavior by the students having an impact on their overall education.
Well, I guess we're back again. Let's talk about it. Now, for transparency's sake, I want y'all to know that I'm a high school teacher, not a middle school teacher. So I understand to a degree, especially with having like 9th graders, 10th graders, you know, when they're really trying to feel themselves. If you watch the video, they talk about how kids act in school and how kids are pretty much being disrespectful to teachers, being disrespectful to him, punking him out, you know, et cetera, while he's in the classroom. Most teachers, including myself, and I learned this very early, that sometimes you have to teach these kids something that's not in the textbook. Because the gentleman is right. If these kids go out here and they say this stuff to the wrong person out here in these streets, then they're eventually going to get hurt or worse, get killed. But at the same time, where do you think they're learning this stuff from? The streets. So therefore, you have to talk to them as if you are in the streets. Now, granted, we as teachers, we have to be extremely professional with everything that we do. We have to, because that's in our contract. But as a fairly young age teacher, being like 30 years old, most of these kids know that, hey, Mr. Jackson ain't gonna play with them. Like, I distinctly remember my first year teaching, and there was a kid, and he pretty much said, Jackson, I'm gonna beat your ASS. I ain't been teaching a full month yet, and I ain't had grown folks say, I'm gonna beat your ASS. So I really had to remember where I was for a second, but I knew in that moment I had to handle it accordingly. And if I didn't handle it the right way, then I was gonna have an issue in my class.
What do you think about that? Off top, are those numbers true?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Tell me.
So, personally, and if anybody goes and see my TikTok, I actually made a TikTok on this whole topic. In my opinion, there, just like anything in life, there's three things that has to go into it. All right, or the different parts that has to go into it. In this particular topic, in my opinion, it has to go. There's three equal parts. There's the teacher, there's the student, and then there's the parent. So if two of those things are working in conjunction with each other, no matter what two are working in conjunction with each other, then ultimately the student is going to get what the student needs. So for example, if you have a great math teacher or a great teacher in general, and a parent that's pushing that student to do what they need to do, get their homework done, go study, making sure they got pencil, paper, whatever they need, then ultimately the student has the ability to be great. Notice I said ability. I didn't say they were going to do great. And I'll touch on that here in a second. But a different scenario, if you have the teacher, if you have a good teacher and you have a great student, but you don't have a parent, that's one of those combinations where, in my opinion, the student can still be successful. Why? Because ultimately the teacher is pushing the students. Obviously, the teacher really cares about the student, and the student wants to learn. The student wants to be good. The student just doesn't want a good grade, but they really want to understand the content and everything. So they're going to be successful because there's more of a internal motivation behind it. Now, if you have a bad teacher in the essence and everything, then truth be told, there's not a whole lot that can be done on that side. However, it's the parent's job to go out there and find a tutor, go out there and find something. You know, it's not like when we were growing up where, like I said, the internet wasn't as free or anything like that. Nowadays, like I said, you can learn more on the internet than you can in a textbook, and it's quicker.
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know, from what you're saying, the three parts, teacher, student, and the parent, do those three parts necessarily need to be equal? Or I guess the way the formula goes, only two need to outweigh the one?
No, but in my opinion, the three parts go like this. I would say the student has about 50% of the job. Why? Because at the end of the day, the student has to get the work done. The student has to understand the content. The student has to take the test. I would say 40% has to fall on the teacher, maybe 35, somewhere in that ballpark, only because, and I'm actually going to quote a rapper of mine that I really enjoy, Chance the Rapper. He said on an interview with the Breakfast Club that you could give somebody the Bible and they can read it page to page and not understand it, but get it in front of a pastor who understands the Bible and he can connect Genesis to Luke to Exodus to Proverbs, and it all makes sense. So that's why I said the teacher is going to be a heavier part than the parent, just because I can make adding and subtracting integers connect to adding and subtracting, or solving equations. Those are two different ideas, but together they work the same. They work like this. And the 10% or the 15% with the parent has to come from just them pushing their child, making sure, hey, their child gets to school on time, making sure that, hey, my child has pencil, paper, you know, a place to stay, a head to lay down, making sure my child is doing the homework, making sure, more importantly, I'm checking grades. you know, where, and I tell this story all the time with my parents, and they get mad at me. Where my parents stopped helping me in math in third and fourth grade, that didn't stop them from, if I needed help, they found somebody to help me.
Yeah, that's key. That's key in getting you the resources. And this is kind of perfectly segueing to this next video I want to talk about. And you kind of asked the question, when does the total success and responsibility stop at the teachers and fall back on the parents? This sounds kind of like a case of that, correct?
Absolutely. And it's funny that you bring up that topic, because that's actually the question that I've been trying to look for an answer for. Back last year, we had a professional development with a principal named Principal Kafele. And I don't know if you know of him or anything like that, but he's a very well-known principal out in the East Coast and everything. And now he kind of goes around talking to teachers and, just getting teachers ready for school year and everything, which is fine, which is great. But we did a book study on him and everything. And long story short, just give a little context about him, is that he started in an urban school just like everybody else and everything on the East Coast. He had hard troubling kids, et cetera, low attendance rates, kids not wanting to come to school, yada 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 yada. Stuff that I'm sure you and anybody else who's watching this have seen over the years. And how he presented the information, he said that it has to fall back on the school, where in my school we're pushing as much as we can. We're calling parents, we're going to professional development on ACT, ACAB, MEP test, or whatever your standardized test is in your school, or in your state. Making sure that we're excited to be there. We're pushing the kids and everything, which is great, which is dandy. But then you get to the news, and if the students don't perform well, it's not the student's fault that they didn't perform well, it's the teacher. Well, pause. If I'm doing all this stuff, I'm breaking it down, but then the child doesn't want to do, why is it my fault that the child doesn't want to do? When does the parents come involved? But then the parents want to come involved only when the child fails, not when the child isn't doing, and you done sent several emails, several text messages, several phone calls. They want to come in, oh, well, my child's failing. Why is my child failing? And so that's why I asked the question, when does the total success of a student fall off of the teacher? Because the teacher can only do so much. It's no different than me going out there showing you how to shoot a basketball. Okay, I'll show you how to shoot it, but it's your job to go out there and practice your form, get your form right to be able to make baskets consistently.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it. And it's funny. There's also this video going around. I don't know if you've seen, I think it started on TikTok, but I saw it on Twitter and stuff. But it's about exactly that. And like the parents not getting the resources and the tools to help the students when the schools can't.
I mean, at the end of the day, the parents get what they want to get. I'm sure you saw this when you were teaching, and especially here recently, I see kids with Balenciagas,
I wanted to ask you, what's
bathing.
wrong with Balenciagas?
Man, I mean, outside of them being ugly shoes, you know, it's like you're in ninth grade, eighth grade, sixth grade, and you got a $1,200 pair of shoes on, but you got a D in my class.
That part. It's that part.
Yeah, it's like, you know, some this math ain't mathing in my book because I know good and doggone well. You know, I was a video game nerd when I was a kid. I know I couldn't get not a video game if my grades were low. Nah, if my grades were high, yeah, they go out there and buy whatever. You know, you want these? I got you. You got, you know, I'm not expecting you to get a 4.0 or nothing like
Hey,
that. You
so
know, but
wait,
you're going out there and being successful.
for 1 second. So, man, I completely agree with you, right? You can't have the Balenciaga sneakers and the new PS5 and the new PS5 and a
Right,
D in class, right? You can't have all
right.
those. But in the same breath, the teachers kind of need to, it's a bad way to say it, but we got to know our place and can't tell the parents how to parent, right? Or is
And see,
that
and
our
that's
position? Is that our position to tell them that?
we don't have a choice because it's funny that you say that because I actually had a parent one day. You know, it was a child being disruptive in my classroom and everything, and I said, hey, you know, such and such is, you know, cutting up in class, yada 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 yada. What do you want me to do? At that point, I had no words. I just said, okay, well, you know, if you could just maybe talk to them or, you know, do something to them. Well, they don't listen to me. They don't do this, yada, 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 yada. And so I hung up the phone and I called my mom because my mom used to be an educator. She used to work in preschool. So, you know, a whole different scenario. But I called my mom and I said, hey, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a very serious question. If my teacher ever called you and said I was doing something in school, what would have happened? I was like, and I want you to give me a very serious answer. You already know I would have da 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 da. Okay, I'm just making sure. Well, this mom just told me this, and she was kind of outdone. And being a parent myself, like I know, like let one of my boys come home and the teacher then say, oh well, he ain't doing it. I guarantee you, when he comes to school the next day, you're gonna see a whole different child. So
Right. And like that's how I was brought up too. But I don't know, it's just the thought or the realistic thought that not every parent is like yours and mine, right? So the parents who
right.
aren't like ours, I don't know, like, can we help them? Should we help them? I feel like we should since we're all
You
for the student, but can we?
You should, but at the same time, there's a line. There's
Yeah.
like, you know, there's a line that we as teachers we can't cross because if we cross it, then we're wrong, and we're always going to be wrong because, like you said earlier, they're going to say, "How can you tell me how to raise my child?" I can't tell you how to raise your child. However, I can tell you right now, being a black male in society, society is going to tell you what your child can and can't do based off this piece of paper right here that says your child is math level is on a fifth grade level, but you're supposed to be, you know, in eighth grade, ninth grade. Or society is going to tell you when your child can't break a 20 without the register break it down. And then there's somebody that's cussing you out because you shorted them $15 or whatever the case may be. So again, it's a conversation that personally I believe needs to be had, but the parents can't take offense to it because if they can sit up there and tell us teachers what we're not doing, we should be able to tell them the same thing. Like, hey, we need you to do this. You want me to do this? Cool. I need you to do this because if it takes a village to run, or excuse me, it takes a village to raise a child, and that village consists of teachers, parents, grandparents, big brothers who have gone through stuff, coaches, big sisters who've gone through things, et cetera, to really mold and shape a child into a good product of society today.
Yeah. And I want to use that to maybe add to your original equation, right? Where it's the student, teacher, and parent. I think a fourth big component of that would be the environment, right? The things around the student. So for example, like you have your sometimes it's not the right messenger giving the message, right? The teacher
Correct.
can say everything you want, but the student may not receive it. The parent could say it at all, and the student still may not receive it. I think the a good messenger could be maybe a karate teacher, who teaches discipline with the fighting styles, right? Or maybe like a big brother, big sister mentor program where it's so more relatable who can teach you those things.
I agree, but even then, that's putting, or at least in my opinion, that's more so putting the responsibility back onto the child
I
versus
hear it.
putting it on the parent. You see what I'm saying? My oldest boy, he plays soccer, so I might say something, but then his coach will say the same thing, and it'll click. But now that's putting the pressure on the child versus the coach coming to me saying, "Hey, your son needs to do blah 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 blah," and I'm not making sure he's doing blah 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 blah. You know,
Yeah.
so and I feel like that's a battle that's always going to be had. It's going to forever in the realm of education happen, and it's going to be questioned when do parents become accountable for their children learning, just like the teachers are held accountable to make sure that students are being successful or children are being successful in school.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it, Mr. Jackson. One last thing I kind of want to talk about, which in my head, this all works so nicely and just bring this all together. But all the things we talked about, going from phones, going to student behavior, going back to the responsibility of the parent versus the teachers, it all, I think, comes down to a type of classroom management, right? And I want to maybe back up and say my style of classroom management, if I were to synthesize into one statement, it would be relationships and communication, right? I think a good way to manage your classroom, not just being the super big disciplinary or anything, but just having a relationship where you can talk and communicate with your students is the way I would go about it. What would you
I agree.
describe your classroom management style as? Are you the type that yells? You what? Pull a card?
It's actually funny you say that. So at my school, I'm known as the cool math teacher or the chill math teacher that gives a lot of work.
I feel it. Yeah.
Um, and most of my students, past and present, know that I don't get any louder than this right here. And I try not to get any louder than this. Why? Because personally, I don't like yelling. I've never liked it as a child. I didn't like it as an adult, so I just don't do it unless I have to. Um, and yeah, I definitely think that your classroom management does come with how the students view you as a person, because there was talking in my school just about my classroom management and stuff like that, and they said some people may argue, hey, you don't have good classroom management, where other ones say, man, you got the hard kid to listen to you, and they really buy into what you're saying, not just necessarily math, but like what they really got going on at home. And I've always, I think, well, let me get my thoughts together. I think for the most part that a lot of students want to be heard. And there are teachers who, they'll say to first year teachers, and I heard it all the time, don't smile until December. Don't smile until after Christmas. Cause then you got I tried it, and I was like, within like 2 days, I said, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. I'm like, I'm this. This isn't my personality. And it's actually funny that I say all this because my students, my first set of kids who graduated high school and everything, they come back from time to time. They tell me, they say, yeah, like you really blossomed into a teacher, and they still call me to this day about issues that they have. And they compare me to some of their professors and all this other stuff, and I love it. And it makes me happy. But yeah, I definitely think that at the end of the day, you have to first establish a relationship with your students in order for you to have effective classroom management. Because at the end of the day, yeah, rules are rules, but even us as adults, I might listen to this manager or this principal more than I listen to this one, just because this one comes to me and talks to me about life or something random versus just, hey, I need you to go ahead and blah 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 blah, or I need you to fix this, and you're approaching to me more as a person versus your role that you're in.
Yeah. And that is all styles of classroom management. That's great. That's great, Mr. Jackson. You got it. Yeah. But again, thank you so much for this, Jabari. Your thoughts on students using their phones in class, classroom management, getting parents involved. They're all part of the reasons why I think you might be one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Well, I greatly appreciate you. And follow me on TikTok.
Hey, of course,
I'm
plug it
trying
real
to
quick.
get that count up.
What's the TikTok?
I don't know my TikTok name, but if you type in my name, Jabari, my face will pop up.
All right,
It's a
also
very
tag you.
common face. So
All right, I'll also tag you in the video when this goes up too. But Mr. Jackson, also thanks to my sponsors like Costco, Teachers of Color Matter, Victorious RED Restoration, and some anonymous donors too. I'd actually like to give you this $150 gift card to use with you or your students or whatever you choose.
okay, I greatly appreciate you. I really do.
Yeah, of course, of course. I'm trying to make teachers feel great and appreciated, and this is my way of doing it.
I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Also, thank you to everyone else for watching The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color, tied their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you really liked it, leave a comment for me and Jabari to see. Also, if you are the greatest teacher of all time, or if you know the greatest teacher of all time, let me know. Go to greatestteacherofalltime.com and click on Submit a Teacher. Hope to see you soon.